welcome to the channel. This channel is all about blues harmonica. If you're new to it, thumbs up and subscribe. Here we are in very challenging times, of course. New things to get stuck into as well as developing old things, of course. We're all in the same boat to a degree. And today I'd like to talk to you with the blues harmonica about ways of learning with regard to the blues harmonica, but of course it could be applied to just about anything, of course. And I'd like to discuss it with regard to the environment. Scientists recently have come out with some new research, and you can look that up online on Google to check it out. I won't go through all that here, and you can make the decisions for yourself. But new research is out suggesting that environment, if you, for example, are studying in a quiet room, all right, or you might be playing this in a quiet room, and you're trying to recall things, that kind of nature, or learning new things, or improvising, whatever you're trying to do. If you get used to doing that in a quiet room, then that will be the best situation for you to apply those things in a much easier way. So one of the sensible things to do is practice in various environments so that that doesn't create a problem, so that one isn't an advantage over another. Okay. The second thing to say is that you should, within the environment, use your imagination. Now I'll come back to that in a second, but way back when there's a great saxophone player. I won't mention his name because there was plenty like him, but he was one of the pioneers of his style way back when. And after a gig one night in the dressing room, a guy was talking to him and said, "Man, you know, you drink all the time and you play so brilliantly. How on earth do you do that?" And he said, "Well, that's easy, man, because that's the way I practice." Now, of course, I don't advocate that. Of course, quite the reverse. You should cut out all that nonsense, and anybody that tells you any different, in my view, is completely wrong. Okay, what it does create, and what unwittingly this chap had done over the years, he created an environment where he was at his most successful when he was in that particular state. So in a way he created what we call dependency, and that's something that you should avoid at your peril, really. Many years ago I was coaching a guy who had been in a club, seen a saxophone player play, and I was a jazz saxophonist for many years, and he adopted what this guy was using by using some gum shield on the bottom of his mouth to facilitate with bite and all the rest of it. It's a long story, but and I told him to cut that out, because of course it's another thing to depend on, and if you were working out year on year having to rely on that, you wouldn't be able to get your tone and everything else once you haven't got that with you. So it's not a sensible course of action. Okay, so let's go back to this imagination thing and ways of learning. Everybody learns differently. That's I think everybody realizes that. And of course, collective learning is okay if you're playing in a big band or you're going to be performing as a group or one thing or another, and those things at times are important. But in terms of moving ahead on a blues harmonica, then individual coaching has to be the way forward. It's not just the fact that everybody learns at a different rate, different pace. The actual approach to this is slightly different. And of course it's not like just hitting a note on a piano and having to make the note in one way. You have to work at other things. And what you don't want to happen is like learning from a point of view of throwing mud against the wall. What I mean by that is you play something over and over and over and over again, and eventually that will drop into long-term memory. Of course it will, because you'll have done it that often. But from an improvisational skill or from a learning tune capacity or whatever, which are different skills, require different things, that's not the most effective way to go about it. And you will waste an awful lot of time if you do that. You get certain results, but it's not the most cost-effective and most efficient way to operate. All right. So, and there's lots of different ways to go about it. Now, this imagination thing, you should imagine your environment. So you see a lot of guys on the tube who are very carefree about what they're playing in front of. Their imagination doesn't stretch too far in what they, and that's fine. That's fine for them. That's okay. But what I'm suggesting here is you should imagine all the time. Every time you play, you should always imagine that you're playing in front of people. You're playing in that club, that blues club, or whatever. You're playing in front of the people. Even when you're just using an exercise, okay? This should always be employed. It should be built into your sort of psyche, if you like, built into your mind. And that will facilitate your learning process. It will shorten the time, and it will help relax you in everything that you do and help your improvisational skills. And of course, when you're learning tunes, when you're learning phrases, when you're developing phrases, when you're farming out and doing your own thing, and when you're nailing down style, technique, dexterity, they are all different disciplines that you have to accumulate into one strategy to make the thing simple in terms of how to go about your exercising and training, so that everything becomes fun. So that if everything becomes fun, then again you will learn the most, just like the correct environment. You will learn the most. Okay, and your imagination plays a huge part in that. And I see it all over the tube that they don't impress upon you that enough. And that is so, so important. And they'll often deny it, the coaches will often deny it to you, of what has motivated them. And it doesn't really matter what is the initial motivation, providing that that motivation is in you. And of course, a good coach will tap into the individual to find out what is that motivator. For some people in lockdown, the motivator could be boredom. All right, I've coached many people on instruments over many years who got to be great players because they were bored. Okay, another person, just like somebody that kicks a football against the wall when he's got nobody else to play with, so they kick the football against the wall, improving their techniques. They're doing it because they're bored, and then they go inside the house, and an hour later they pick the football, and then they're just doing this again against the wall. But of course, unwittingly, they're developing their skill, and they're exercising their mind and all the other things that they're doing. All right, so there's another idea. Okay, so we've got all these things, and it's so important to tap into the individual psyche on that one, and to work out ways of why people are doing things. Okay, so I hope that's an insight and get you thinking about how we're going to move forward with this. And that's the most important thing. All right, so thumbs up and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I have told this story before. I was actually as well. I was going to show you a little bit of my recent artwork, but for the life of me, I can't put my hands on it at this present moment in time. But I will leave you with this story because I think it's poignant at this moment. Two guys, a guy called Sherlock Holmes, another guy called Dr. Watson, very good friends. And during lockdown, they found themselves isolated, but they took their tent and they went up onto the beautiful country moorlands and glens, and they took a tent with them. And so they were kind of isolating that way. There was nobody for miles around them, and they were in their tent, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, Watson's woken to see that Holmes is awake. What is it, Holmes? What's the problem? Watson, Watson, look up. What is it you see? What? Oh, well, Holmes, I see the stars. Yes, yes, man, but what do you see? He says, well, I see Sagittarius going into Gemini. Yes, I see Taurus moving forward and Capricorn on its way and a couple of shooting stars, but more or less it's going to be a fine day tomorrow, Holmes. It's going to be a fine day. Watson, no, man. Good God. Can't you deduce anything? Someone has stolen our tent. I'll catch you on the rebound.